Hi, I'm Shannon McGrattan, and welcome to The News House. Today I'm talking to author Conor Grennan, who is most famous for his memoir, Little Princes, One Man's Promise to Bring Home the Lost Children of Nepal. Conor has been traveling to many universities and colleges over the past couple of weeks, and he's finally here in Syracuse to talk to us. So Conor, welcome to Syracuse.
Thank you so much.
How's it been traveling around to all these different colleges and universities?
It's amazing. It's incredible to have this book, which just started, I thought, as a little book about the kids in Nepal, and have that read by all these college kids all around the country, and go out and speak to them and just learn the sort of different cultures around the United States, but just see the enthusiasm that these students have these days for making a difference in the world.
So how did you get the opportunity to travel to Nepal in the first place?
Yeah, you know, I was living abroad. I had graduated college, back in 1996, and I had decided that I was going to just, travel around the world. I mean, I was, first I went and lived in Prague, and I went and lived in Brussels, and I had a great time living there for about 8 years, and then I had saved enough money to travel around the world. I figured, this is great. I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have kids. I'm never going to have a house with a mortgage. I'm just going to blow all my money. None of those things turned out to be true, except the blowing the money part. And I ended up going on this year-long trip around the world, and the first stop was Nepal. And the only reason I went to Nepal to volunteer, because I wanted to go to trek to Mount Everest, the only reason I went to Nepal to volunteer was to try to ease some of the guilt I was feeling, because people were saying, wow, you're really not going to volunteer anywhere around the world? That's crazy. You're such an idiot. And so I thought, okay, well, if I get it out of the way in the first stop, then I can enjoy myself. And it turned out that was the most sort of substantial moment of the trip for me.
So what was the most impactful thing when you were at Nepal? I mean, obviously you traveled the world. Mm-hmm. Where did you go that made you decide you had to go back there and see these kids? I think that I saw all around the world that there was a lot of need around the world. And I didn't want to, nobody ever wants to throw all that burden on their shoulders. I mean, I was there to travel, but you can't completely close your eyes to all that need. And but mostly, I think I was realizing that I was just missing the kids, and that came as a huge surprise to me, to somebody who, again, didn't really ever have any intention to volunteer in his life, and certainly never wanted to work with kids or anything like that. So I think that the real surprise to me was, even though I was having this phenomenal time, literally traveling the globe, I just kept being reminded of those kids and wanting to get back and spend another few months with them. So I think that was what brought me back there. Is there one specific child that really touched your heart?
Yeah, there are a bunch of them, I think, and they all touch my heart, I think, for very different reasons. But some because I became very good friends with them. Some because they just had incredible stories to tell. Some because they were incredible caretakers of other children. I think that one of the kids I found myself very attached to was a boy in the book named Jagreet, who he thought that his whole life, his whole family had been taken from him when he was 5 years old. And he lived under that notion that his whole family was dead, until I was able to actually go many years later and go into the mountains looking for some kind of hope, a remnant of where he maybe came from, and would learn that his whole family was actually alive, that death certificates had been forged for his family so that he could be trafficked when he was 5. Now he's 14 at that time. And he became special to me because I was already good friends with him, and because he was such a caretaker of other children and never really expected anything back. And to be able to give something back to him was extraordinary. So
after writing the book, you were named by the Huffington Post Game Changer of 2011.
Yeah.
Where were you, and how did that feel?
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of one of a bunch, but I was that one in my category. It was, it's incredible. It's, and I don't mean to sound overly modest. You'll find that I'm not a very modest guy, but it felt a little bit overwhelming. That, and even the fact that people are reading this book at all, it felt overwhelming, because when you're going through something like this, it doesn't feel like you're doing anything even interesting, let alone extraordinary or anything like that. So I think I look back at all the other people doing things, and I think, wow, they're really doing extraordinary things. But this was just sort of what I was doing, and it was never, my heart was in the right place, and I wanted to go out and rescue the children of Nepal, or I wanted to go change the world. It was never anything like that. It was just, this is just the way life sort of evolved for me. So I take it all with a grain of salt. I wouldn't encourage anybody to take that stuff too seriously. But I do understand that when you kind of look at it holistically, it looks like an interesting story. And I hope that story of how, if you just decide to persevere in something, even if you have absolutely no skills and no passion or compassion or anything, it's the perseverance that can get you, incredibly far.
So last question, you are in Connecticut. How do you work with Next Generation Nepal?
Yeah, I mean, having been based in the States, and we've been based in Los Angeles for a year now, coming back to Connecticut, just all through email, Skype, and everything else. I get out to Nepal once a year in October. It's a very long time to get out there. But I also recognize that the work is already being done by our people out there. I'm just sort of there to kind of lend a little bit of history and a helping hand and everything else. But I have a very easy life compared to what they're doing out there. So I appreciate them letting me kind of sit here and do very little.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Conor.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon.
Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. That's it for the News House today.